A story that left me completely astonished. I believe it may be the most meaningful story of my life in terms of connection with spirit. I had never experienced anything like it before. I finished writing Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling on April 23rd. I knew the book would have 18 chapters because 18 is a magical number, an infinite source, a single infinite source. It is a number I keep in mind constantly. I put it on my car's dashboard and on the mirror as a reminder. 18 is the number of chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, the number of holes on a golf course. It carries something sacred. I had completed 17 chapters and was delighted, but I still had one chapter left to write. I decided to save it for my birthday, May 10th. I knew what that final chapter would be about. My experience of living an inspired life. I planned to write it in the early morning, around 3:13. That day I went for a walk after finishing chapter 17. In that chapter, I told a story about my friend Jack Boland. Jack passed away about 12 years ago. He was the minister of the Unity Church in Detroit, a man who, 3 decades ago, when I published Your Erroneous Zones, called me to ask permission to use some excerpts in his church. I agreed, and that is how our friendship began. Over time, I started speaking at his church and visiting him often. We became very close, like brothers. Jack became gravely ill with cancer, and I took him to my friend Deepak Chopra's Ayurveda Center in Massachusetts. During the day, we followed treatments, and at night, Jack always had a story to tell. Once he spoke to me about monarch butterflies and his fascination with them. He would say, "Wayne, they are incredible creatures. They have a brain the size of a pinhead, practically no brain at all. Their body is as fragile as tissue paper. And yet these butterflies emerge from a chrysalis on a tree in Brazil and fly all the way to Nova Scotia, traveling more than 4,385 kilometers. They spend some time there and then return to the very same tree and the very same branch where they were born to begin the cycle again." Jack told me this story with wonder, comparing their abilities with our human limitations. "I have a fairly large brain," he would say, "and still I forget where I leave my phone. These butterflies with a tiny brain manage to return to the exact same branch." That story stayed etched in my mind and became part of chapter 17, which I titled The Language of Spirit. In that chapter, I spoke about how spirit communicates with us through alignments, repeating numbers, ideas that show up again and again, signs that guide us. When I finished writing, I called Joanna, my editor for more than 30 years. I read her the story about Jack and the butterflies. I also called Reed Tracy, the president of my publisher, Hay House, and one of my best friends to read him the chapter. I always do this when I finish a chapter. I read it aloud to hear how it sounds. That day I went for a walk along Kapalua Beach in Maui. It was midday and I headed toward a place called Black Rock. I was about to meditate when suddenly a monarch butterfly came out of a tree and flew in front of me, less than a meter away. I was surprised because I had never seen monarch butterflies on that beach before. I thought it was a curious coincidence, considering I had just written about them. I tried to approach it, but the butterfly flew far off, about 40 meters away, and then turned around. It came back and landed on my finger. I had never experienced anything like it. I have had butterflies brush against me before, but never one that wanted to be with me in that way. I took out my phone and called Joanna. I said, "Joanna, there is a monarch butterfly on my finger. Do you remember the story I read to you this morning?" She, in her usual calm, replied, "Meditate." Somewhat incredulous, I insisted, "It is a monarch butterfly. I just wrote about this." She simply said, "Meditate." I also called Reed and told him what was happening. He said, "Take a picture." This is perfect for the book cover, but I didn't have a camera with me, only my phone. I decided to follow Joanna's advice and meditated for 30 minutes with the butterfly still perched on my finger. When I finished, I called Joanna again. "It is still here," I told her. I also called Reed, who again insisted, "Get a picture." During my meditation, I felt something extraordinary. I know it sounds strange, but it seemed as if the butterfly were trying to communicate with me. It was trying to talk to me. I do not know if you have ever looked closely at a monarch butterfly, but they have something like tiny teeth, although I know they are not really teeth. I brought the butterfly close to my eye, and it seemed to make movements as if it were trying to communicate. In that moment, I said, "Jack," because I had just written about him, and I thought perhaps it was Jack. Then I brought the butterfly close to my ear in case it was making any sound. I could not believe it. I was completely amazed. An hour had already gone by, and the butterfly was still there. I moved it from one finger to another, but it did not leave. It seemed connected to me somehow. I thought, maybe Reed is right. Perhaps I should get a photo of this. I decided to go back home walking along the beach. In Maui in the afternoons, the trade winds blow quite strongly, and as I walked, the butterfly's wings, as fragile as tissue paper, bent completely in the wind, but it did not leave. Its wings were at their limit, yet it stayed with me. When I finally got out of the wind, the butterfly seemed calmer. I kept walking and came across a little girl, about 4, 5, or 6 years old, who was completely distraught because she had been given a Slurpee of the wrong color. Her mother was handling the tantrum, and the girl was saying, "I wanted yellow, and you gave me purple." I hate purple Slurpees. I decided to approach and touched her shoulder. I said, "Would you like to see my butterfly?" The girl, curious, asked, "What is its name?" I answered, "Its name is Jack." At that moment, her attitude changed completely. She went from being totally angry to a state of pure happiness in a matter of seconds. The tears disappeared, she smiled, and she asked if she could take it home. I replied, "No, what are you saying? This is my butterfly. I got back home around 1:30 in the afternoon. I live in a place with a concierge and a pool." I called Cindy, who works there, and asked her to go to the ABC store to buy a disposable camera and be back in 5 minutes. She asked me, "You want me to come to your apartment with a disposable camera in 5 minutes?" I told her yes. She pressed, "Why?" I explained, "I want you to take a picture of me with my butterfly." She hesitated for a moment and said, "What are you smoking?" I assured her, "It is true, I found a butterfly." Since she practices yoga and is quite a spiritual person, she agreed, especially when I told her I would pay her $100 if she did it quickly. She came back with the camera and we sat on the balcony. She took about 29 photos of me with the butterfly. I posed with it in several spots, on my finger next to the manuscript. I did not know exactly what the butterfly wanted or what it all meant. Those photos were real, though we had to use other images for the book because $13 cameras are not ideal for covers. I insisted that they include Jack on my finger on the book cover. They did it using technology to superimpose the image, so in effect, that is the real butterfly. If it flies out of here right now, I promise you I will faint. I went back and paid Cindy for the photos. She took the camera to be developed, and by then it was about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Almost 2 hours had passed since the butterfly appeared. At that moment, I wondered what to do with it. What does a butterfly eat? Should I get it a leash, a cage? Should I keep it or set it free? I had no idea what to do. Finally, I put it on the manuscript I had written that morning, where I had spoken about Jack. The monarch butterfly, I picked it up and placed it there, thinking it might recognize that this was its place of origin or something like that. I left it walking around while I went in, took a shower, and when I came back, it was still there. I meditated a bit, did some work, and later returned. The butterfly was still there after 2.5 hours. I extended my finger after I had showered, and the butterfly looked at me as if to say, "Who are you and what are you doing?" It was as if it wanted to show me it was not sick and that this was no coincidence. Then it began to fly around me, made a circle, and headed straight toward the ocean, took another turn, and disappeared. That is my butterfly story. What I want to suggest is that you pay attention to the powerful things that appear in your life. Those things we call coincidences are much more aligned with spirit than we might imagine. There are no accidents in a universe that has an organizing intelligence that sustains it and creates it. Anything of this sort can be a very powerful message. It is the language of spirit speaking to you, and there is no doubt about it, no matter what others may think. When you find yourself in a place where there are no beginnings or endings, where there is no north or south, no up or down, that means it is infinite. There is only one place, and if that place has unity, it can be anywhere. Spirit can enter Maui upon a butterfly just as easily as it can on a butterfly in Brazil or anywhere else. There is no space and no place. I said I wanted to talk about the three levels of consciousness. One is individual or ego consciousness. In each of us, there are two selves. The first is the ego. The second is what I call the sacred or higher self. This sacred or higher self does not care about winning or losing, about how much we get, about being better than others, or about what we own. This side of us, which dwells in every human being, wants only one thing: that we be at peace, that we choose peace. As A Course in Miracles says, I can choose peace instead of this. I remind myself of this every day when I take my children to school in the morning and they argue about who sits in front, who pushes the buttons, who listens to rap music and things like, Dad, it is my turn this time. While they argue, I remind myself, I can choose peace instead of this. I tell them, be careful or I will press my button. And then they calm down, even if they do not want to listen to that horrible music or whatever it may be. The capacity to choose peace is fundamental. One of the deepest lessons of my life, which I wrote in an essay for 60 Days to Enlightenment in Wisdom of the Ages, comes from Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet. In a poem from Gitanjali, a work that won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1927, he wrote, I went out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this that follows me in the dark? I try to evade his presence, but I cannot escape him. He makes the dust of the earth rise with his swagger. He adds his voice to every word I say. It is my little self, my lord. He knows no shame, but I am ashamed to come to your door in his company. The ego only wants to be right. The higher self, on the other hand, seeks goodness and peace. If we can shift that perspective even a little and ask ourselves before we speak or act, will what I am about to say or do bring me closer to peace or to conflict? We will begin to live more consciously. There are 4 words that, if you learn them, will eliminate all conflict in your relationships. These 4 words are, you are right about that. No matter what someone tells you, you can respond, you are right about that. If someone says to you, you know, you are an idiot, you reply, you know you are right about that. That does not mean they are correct. You simply give that response. For example, someone says, you were supposed to be home at 7:15 and now it is 6:30. I used to respond, wait a minute, you are not my mother. I do not have to explain why I arrive at this time. I am the one who works. Who do you think pays for all this? All those ego-filled answers were part of my life. I am sure you have heard those excuses before, right? Now I simply say, you know you are right. Although sometimes my partner says, do not raise those 4 fingers. I hate when you do that. But now I realize she also uses the 4 fingers, even if in a different way. The point is that right before responding to someone, instead of thinking you need to be right or prove something, just pause and say, you know, you are right. All the people I have met who operate at these higher levels I am describing here tonight feel no need to be in control, to be right, to be dominant. They simply allow themselves to be. This reminds me of the story of Buddha, when someone followed him for 3 days, constantly criticizing him and finding fault in everything he did or said. Yet Buddha always responded with peace and love. Finally, after 3 days, that person said, I do not understand. I have spent 3 days insulting and ridiculing you, and you always respond with kindness and love. How can you do that? Buddha replied with these magical words, when someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong? So if someone offers you their anger, hatred, or insults, but you do not accept them, whose are they? Why should you be upset by something that belongs to someone else? It is not yours. That is a higher level of consciousness, the capacity to choose peace. Now I want to talk about 4 ways of thinking that can keep you from reaching and connecting with the universal spirit of intention. First, thinking about what you lack in life. To align with intention, you must catch that thought the moment it occurs and change it. Instead of thinking about what is missing, focus on what you truly want to manifest and attract into your life without doubts or hesitations. Here are some suggestions to help you break the habit of focusing on what is lacking. Play a version of the matching game. For example, mismatched thought, I do not have enough money. Matched thought, I intend to attract unlimited abundance into my life. Mismatched thought, my partner is grouchy and boring. Match thought. I will focus on what I love about my partner. Mismatched thought. I am not as attractive as I would like. Match thought. I am perfect in God's eyes, a divine manifestation of the process of creation. This is not about empty affirmations, but about aligning your mind with the power of intention. What you think about is what expands. If you spend your time thinking about what you lack, that is what will grow in your life. Supervise your self-talk and align your thoughts with what you desire to create. Second, thinking about the circumstances of your life. If you do not like certain circumstances, do not dwell on them. As paradoxical as it may seem, you need to align your imagination with what you want, not with what you do not want. All that mental energy you spend complaining attracts more of the same. Change your inner dialogue to focus on what you intend to create. For example, mismatched thought. I hate my job and the fact that I am not appreciated. Matched thought. I will act on my intuitive impulses to create the job of my dreams. Mismatched thought. I get sick all the time and I always have colds. Matched thought. I am divine health. I will act healthfully and strengthen my immune system. You must take responsibility for the circumstances of your life without guilt. Whatever has come into your life, in some way, you participated in it. Use your self-talk to keep your focus on what you desire to create, and you will regain the power of your source. Third, thinking about what has always been. When your inner dialogue focuses on how things have always been, you act on those thoughts and the universal creative force keeps bringing more of the same. Your imagination is part of what imagined you into existence, and it is a force of creation. You are using your inner thoughts against yourself. Imagine the absolute spirit thinking this way. I cannot create more life because things have not worked for me in the past. There have been so many mistakes that I cannot stop thinking about them. How much do you think spirit could create if it thought that way? How can you connect to the power of intention if your thoughts, responsible for what you desire, focus on everything you abhor from the past? The answer is obvious, and so is the solution. Make a change. Catch yourself in the moment you think about what has always been and shift your inner dialogue toward what you desire to manifest. In this matching game, you score points by being on the same team as the absolute spirit. For example, mismatch. We have always argued in this relationship. Match. I will work to be at peace and will not allow anyone to affect me negatively. Mismatch. My children have never shown me respect. Match. I will teach my children to respect all forms of life and treat them the same way. The matches reflect a bond with the original creative spirit. The mismatches, in contrast, represent interference you have built that moves you away from intention. Any thought that takes you backward is an impediment to manifesting your desires. The most conscious people understand that if you do not have a story, you do not have to live by it. Free yourself from any part of your story that keeps you focused on what has always been. The fourth obstacle to connecting with intention. Thinking about what others want for you. There is probably a long list of people, mostly family members, who have strong opinions about what you should be doing, how you should think, where you should live, and how much time you should devote to them, especially on special occasions and holidays. The definition of friendship, fortunately, excludes the manipulation and guilt we often endure in our families. Practice catching yourself when you have a thought about what others want for you, and ask, does this expectation align with mine? If not, simply laugh at the absurdity of getting upset over others' expectations of how you should live your life. This is a way to align with spirit and become immune to outside criticism, while also ending the insidious habit of attracting into your life things you do not want. Examples. Mismatch. I am so upset with my family. They never understand me. Match. I love my family. They do not see things as I do, but I do not expect them to. Mismatch. I try too hard to please everyone. Match. I am fulfilling my purpose and doing what I came to do in this life. Mismatch. I feel so unappreciated by those I help that sometimes I cry. Match. I do what I do because it is my purpose and my destiny. A true story. Marilyn's case. My sister-in-law Marilyn was driving on the Lodge Freeway in Detroit with her husband, my brother, and their 3 small children. Marilyn, a very skeptical person, viewed everything through the lens of logic and science. Nothing related to the mind or spirit made sense to her if it could not be proven. One day, a car crossed the median at high speed and crashed directly into hers. Marilyn suffered fractures in every bone in her face, kidney damage, internal bleeding, and was in intensive care for 13 weeks. The doctors performed a 14-hour surgery with 6 surgeons on the team who talked among themselves during the operation. As Marilyn told me in 1971, when I was 31 years old, she observed the entire surgery from outside her body. Marilyn described that she left her body and rose to the corner of the room. She said she was surrounded by a magnificent light without boundaries or form, and that she felt absolute peace like never before in her life. She also saw a tunnel, and although she had the option to go through it, she chose not to. From that place, she watched the surgeons working on her body and heard everything they said. When she awoke, she told them exactly which doctors wanted to continue and which preferred to stop their efforts. She repeated word for word what each one had said during the operation. From that experience, Marilyn changed completely. She became a calm, loving, and resilient person. From then on, she never lost that inner peace, even in the face of the worst adversities. Her inner flame, as she called it, never went out. The tough part is my brother. He always goes ahead of her, and he is very linear. He works in insurance. He is a wonderful, caring, beautiful person. Everything he does is motivated by his concern and care, but he wants to do so much that it reaches a point where it is too much. It is like saying, "All right, I get it. I have the map," and he continues, "But you know which turn to take, right?" And I respond, "Yes, I do." And that can go on for half an hour. She simply sits, reads, and when there are family arguments or someone gets upset, she takes a book, excuses herself, and retreats to a corner. The children say, "What is going on with Mom?" And they reply, "Oh, she has the big perspective." Having the big perspective. Everyone who has had near-death experiences says the same thing. They say the tension, stress, anxiety, and fear that took up so much space in their lives simply disappeared. They are no longer part of their consciousness. My suggestion is that we do not need to live through a traumatic event to understand universal principles, surrender to them, and apply them in our daily lives. We can avoid all that metaphysical language and start to live a spiritual life, understanding that we are truly spiritual beings having a human experience. The quality of that human experience is available only through our thoughts, our mind, and our divine connection. Regardless of your religious beliefs, try not to think of yourself as a Christian, but as someone who lives by the values of Christ. Try not to see yourself as Jewish, but as someone who emulates Jehovah. Be like Buddha, like Muhammad. These figures did not ask us to idolize images or structures, but to speak of kindness, love, forgiveness, gentleness, and spirit, reminding us that we are all connected. When you begin to live that way, you realize how easy it is. Blaise Pascal, the famous 17th century French philosopher and scientist, said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. You will never come to know God unless you access the field of all possibilities." As St. Mark said, "With God, all things are possible." That leaves nothing out. To reach this field, you must pass through the layers of your mind, from the surface, where there is constant noise, to a deeper level, where you analyze everything until you reach a place of synthesis, where you see how everything is connected. Finally, you arrive at a place of stillness, the field of all possibilities. In this state, where you empty your mind of thoughts, whether through meditation, silence, chanting, or prayer, at least twice a day for 30 minutes, you will come to know God. You will discover that in this field of all possibilities, nothing is impossible. This is the place where Jesus performed miracles, where other spiritual beings manifested their gifts. And when they were asked, "How can you do that?" they answered, "How could you not?" The secret is to go beyond the surface of your mind, where everything is noise and repetition of inherited beliefs, to a place of peace. By practicing this, you will not only find tranquility, but what you bring back will be even more meaningful. You will return with solutions, peace, love, tolerance, and kindness, qualities of your higher self, your sacred self. As you master your ego, you will no longer be easily offended. You will have decided to be free. Robert Frost expressed it in his poetry. We all sit in a circle and suppose, while the secret sits in the middle and knows. The secret is the invisible space surrounded by form. It is the silence between the notes that makes the music, not the notes themselves. The vase is not its material, but the space within it. If you break the vase, the material remains, but there is no longer a vase. That is what you are. Divine inner space, silent, eternal, surrounded by a physical body that houses your soul. William Butler Yeats put it this way: an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. Without that divine and eternal space within us, we are just tattered coats upon a stick. Go within, eliminate doubts, discover that you are here for a single purpose, to find and serve God. When you do, you will understand what the Quakers said in their meetings. Service begins when the meeting ends. Live in the present. Life is what happens while you are making other plans. Every instant of your life occurs in the now. Chasing future moments is an ego-based activity. When you finally understand that you have arrived, you will know what it feels like to be free. Your higher self does not want you to be lazy or purposeless, but to realize the power of knowing you are already here. When you fully accept this moment, you will experience heaven on earth because you will be completely immersed in the soul of the sacred instant. Learning to trust your higher self is the path to that understanding. When you release those ingrained teachings from all the egos that have influenced your life up to now, you will begin to realize that you are not being judged in the present moment. You will soon understand that your mission is to serve and extend the love that is your basic essence. You do not need to do more, although you may choose to do a great deal if you wish. Your main objective is to keep your focus on sending and receiving agape, the love of God. If you incorporate the following ideas into the daily practice of your mission, you will achieve your goal. Nothingness. Nothingness has a very positive value in your life. It is out of nothing that everything is created. Space is considered nothing, no particles, no form, and for that reason, we describe it as empty. To fear this empty space or deny its value as part of us is to doubt our very existence. We come from nothing, from nowhere, into the world of form, into the here and now. Surrender. To understand the concept of surrender, you cannot rely on your ego. The ego never wants you even to consider surrender. It prefers that you cling to the belief that you must fight and hold on to what is familiar. The idea of being tied to what happened to you in the past can be deeply rooted in your false self. You must learn to recognize the ego's attachment to the past, especially when it uses this to keep you trapped. Surrender to the belief that your past determines your present. Surrender also means learning to recognize the signals from your higher self that indicate something within you needs to be looked at. This involves accepting whatever is happening in the present moments of your life. For many people, it can be confusing to discern whether the ego or spirit is in charge. A helpful image is that of a boat moving across the surface of a lake. Visualize the wake it leaves as a symbol of the past. That wake does not power the boat. It is only the trace left by the boat's present movements. What powers the boat is the energy generated in the now. The past cannot steer your present, and it should not be blamed for the boat's current problems. Practice surrender by creating a new agreement with the present. Recognize that your past is a succession of present moments that have already slipped by. At the same time, understand that if you are having difficulties right now, you can surrender to that reality. Surrender invites your loving presence to be available in every present instant. Every moment can become a delight, even the last one. Acceptance. When I was asked to define enlightenment, the best I could say was the quiet acceptance of what is. I believe truly enlightened beings are those who refuse to allow things, as they are, to cause them distress. Arriving instead of striving means applying the wisdom of Reinhold Niebuhr's well-known serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Recognizing that difference is perhaps the hardest part. There is an ancient Zen teaching that says, if you understand, things are as they are. If you do not understand, things are as they are. This is the essence of acceptance and the path to arriving rather than striving. Wonder. Your physical being is an enormous miracle. Its thousands of functional parts operate thanks to a divine organizing intelligence. Consider your blood circulation, the inhalation and oxygenation of air, your eyes, muscles, and bones, all responding to an incomprehensible brain and nervous system. There are kilometers of arteries and veins, intestines with tiny microbes working in harmony with that divine intelligence that created the body you inhabit. To enter a state of wonder, pause and contemplate the marvel of your existence. Allow yourself to enjoy the awe and admiration of who and what you are. There is this miraculous machine that houses you, and there is the incomprehensible mystery of the ghost in the machine, which is your mind and soul witnessing it all. Patience. Our loving presence offers us the infinite patience that originates in God. It has taken me more than 50 years to understand many of the concepts I have spoken about here. God has been patient. I have done things in my life that today make me cringe with shame. But somehow God stayed with me patiently, seeing the potential for something greater. I stole and shoplifted in my early years, lied far too often, was promiscuous and unfaithful, used substances, and through all of this and much more, God showed me infinite patience. The stories of the lives of St. Paul and St. Francis of Assisi describe the same kind of patience. This infinite patience is available to you at all times, regardless of where you have been, how you have lived, or how much you have relied on your false self. God's infinite patience is always present. One of the great teachers in my life was Paramahansa Yogananda, a man who came from India to teach the ways of the higher self to people in the West. I have read many of his talks and found great comfort in his writings, as well as in reading about his life. I share one of my favorite lines for you to reflect on as you move toward the consciousness of arriving rather than striving. Seek spiritual riches within yourself. He reminds us, what you are is much greater than anything or anyone you have longed for. That is the voice of your higher self reminding you to quietly accept who you are and turn off the yearning. You will never get it all because you already are all. Recently, someone sent me a video titled The 10 Rules of Success by Steve Jobs. I watched it. It was a video of approximately 40 minutes showing interviews with Jobs at different times in his life. His themes of success were presented, but I believe this story sums them all up. Why do ducks quack and eagles soar? Years ago, my friend Harvey McKay told me a wonderful story about a taxi driver who proved this point. He was waiting for a cab at the airport when one pulled up. The first thing Harvey noticed was that the taxi was immaculately polished. The driver wore a white shirt, a black tie, and freshly pressed black trousers. The cabbie got out, opened the back door for Harvey, and handed him a laminated card while loading his luggage into the trunk. He said, "I am Wally, your driver. While I load your luggage, I would like you to read my mission statement." Surprised, Harvey read the card. It said, "Wally's mission statement: to get my customers to their destination in the fastest, safest, and cheapest way possible in a friendly environment." This left Harvey astonished, especially when he noticed the interior of the cab was as clean as the exterior. As he got in, Wally asked, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" "I have one thermos with regular coffee and another with decaf." Harvey, joking, replied, "No, I would prefer a soft drink." Wally smiled and said, "No problem. I have a cooler up front with regular and Diet Coca-Cola, water, and orange juice." Almost stammering, Harvey asked for a Diet Coke. Wally handed him the drink and said, "If you would like to read something, I have the Wall Street Journal, Time, Sports Illustrated, and USA Today." As they pulled out of the airport, Wally handed him another laminated card. "These are the radio stations I have and the music they play, in case you would like to listen to something." As if that were not enough, Wally informed Harvey that he had the air conditioning on and asked if the temperature was comfortable. Then he suggested the best route for that time of day, offering as well to chat or leave him to his thoughts. Harvey, amazed, asked, "Wally, have you always served your customers this way?" Wally smiled in the rearview mirror and replied, "No, not always. In fact, only for the last 2 years. My first 5 years as a cabbie I spent complaining, like everyone else. One day I heard on the radio a personal growth guru named Wayne Dyer. He had written a book titled, "You'll See It When You Believe It." Dyer said that if you get up in the morning expecting to have a bad day, you will rarely be disappointed. He said, "Stop complaining, differentiate your service from everyone else's. Do not be a duck, be an eagle. Ducks quack and complain. Eagles soar above the crowd." That hit me hard. Wally continued, "I realized Dyer was talking about me. I was always complaining and lamenting, so I decided to change my attitude and become an eagle. I looked around and saw that other cabs were dirty, drivers were rude, and customers were unhappy. I decided to make some changes, little by little. When my customers responded well, I did more." Harvey commented, "I suppose this has worked out well for you." Wally replied, "Absolutely. My first year as an eagle, I doubled my income over the previous year. This year I will probably quadruple it. You were lucky to find me today. I no longer wait at taxi stands. My clients call me for appointments on my cell phone or leave a message. If I cannot pick them up, I get a reliable driver and take a commission." Harvey concluded Wally was phenomenal. He was basically running a limousine service out of a yellow cab. I have told this story to more than 50 cab drivers over the years, but only 2 adopted it. Whenever I visit their cities, I call them. The rest just quack like ducks and give me all the reasons why they cannot do what I suggest. Wally, on the other hand, made a different choice. He stopped quacking like a duck and started soaring like an eagle. No one can force you to serve customers well. It is a choice you make. That is because providing excellent service is a choice. At the end of the story, it says, "I hope this story serves as motivation not only for our advocates, but also for people to see things differently and make the decision to succeed despite life's everyday problems." Isn't it a great story? I would like to share it with some waiters I have met recently who did not seem very happy to be where they were. Well, this applies to practically everything. You do not even need to be working to apply it. It is relevant to how you lead your family, how you run your household, how you do your shopping, and even how you care for your car or your home. If you change the way you look at things, everything changes. I remember I used to give a talk called Ducks and Eagles. This was many years ago. I spoke about how eagles fly above the crowd, while ducks simply quack and stay on the ground, often in the middle of their own mess. Eagles, on the other hand, rise above everything. Learning to change your attitude toward practically everything you do is an incredible lesson. There is a rule called the 80-20 rule. According to this rule, of everything you own, only 20% is what you really use. For example, in your closet, you wear 20% of your clothes over and over, while the other 80% are things you do not use. You look at them, store them, and think, maybe I will need them someday, even though you have been accumulating them every time you move. The idea is simple. Free that 80% you do not use. Give it away. Lao Tzu said, "When your cup is full, stop pouring." In the Western world, we face an obesity crisis, and it could be solved if we adopted what the Tao says. If you realize you have enough, you are truly rich. If we learn something as simple as portion control, taking one bite and asking ourselves, is my cup full? We could avoid excess. The Tao teaches us to reduce excesses and balance deficiencies to reach a state of harmony in our lives. You can practice this with your belongings. Donate the clothes or objects you do not use. Once you have freed that 80%, take something you really like and practice giving it away. It is a wonderful act. Listen to this poem by Hafiz, a great Persian poet. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. There is no debt, no duty. You can practice living in a state of contentment. This was very powerful for me. You cannot imagine how good it feels to walk every day for a year saying, "I am content." I begin every morning of my life with a simple phrase, "Thank you." If you could say only one prayer a day, let it be thank you. I wake up and say, "Thank you, God. Thank you, Source. Thank you, Tao," or whatever you prefer to call it. The first line of the Tao says, "The Tao that can be named is not the Tao." The moment you give it a name, it disappears. It has no name. It is infinite, invisible, and constantly creating from a state of love. On one occasion, I asked for water on the stage, and it was brought to me. I tried to grasp it, but the more tightly I grabbed, the less control I had over it. Water is best experienced when you relax, when you do not resist. Lao Tzu said the same applies to everything in life. The more you cling, the less control you have. The more flexible you are as a person, the more you will accomplish. Jane Roberts, reading the Seth material, said we are awake at the wrong time and asleep at the wrong time. According to her, the best time to be awake is between 3 and 6 in the morning, no matter where you are. I would like to put you to the test. Each of you will receive a wake-up call from God between 3 and 6 in the morning. You will wake up for a moment, note the time, and then listen to your ego to go back to sleep. Or perhaps you will get up, if you have any prostate issues, and return immediately to bed thinking, well, it is 3:30. I do not get up at 3:30 in the morning. Only a fool would do that. The best time to sleep, they say, is between 3 and 6 in the afternoon. But between 3 and 6 in the morning, the world is silent. I learned this after 6 or 7 months of practicing it. I discovered that at those hours I have absolute clarity. After 6 months of getting up at that time, I have begun to realize that I am leaving behind the paradigm in which I was trapped. That paradigm said, if you do not get enough sleep, you will be very tired the rest of the day. But I have learned to challenge that belief. I used to think, let's see, what time did I go to bed? It was 11. Only 4 hours have passed. This will be a deficit of 4 hours of sleep. I will be drowsy all day. I will not finish what I have to do. And tonight, when we have to go out, I will still be tired. I had better go back to sleep. However, an ancient Sufi poet named Rumi wrote in one of his poems, do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. So what I did, following my teacher's advice, was this. He told me that, at first, I would find it difficult because my ego would give me every reason not to try. But he recommended that I wake up, put my feet on the floor, and if I wanted to go back to sleep, do so with my feet still touching the floor. I have tried that on some occasions, but not for long. The irony of all this is that now, when I go to sleep, the time no longer matters. I look forward to 3 or 4 in the morning so I can get up. No matter the temperature, the city, or the place I am in, I eagerly await that moment. I have removed fear from my consciousness. I know I am protected, that everything will be fine. I want to share this with you. It is likely there are people here who already get up at those hours, not necessarily to work, but to meditate, write, make music, create something, or reflect. It is a very spiritual time of day, the most spiritual of all. It is a time when there is more silence. As Melville said, silence is the only voice of God. During this time, you can begin to establish direct communication with the upper part of yourselves, as long as you manage to eliminate many distractions.